Before we dive into today's episode, please note the views and opinions shared by our guest are entirely his or her own and do not reflect the positions of any organization with which he or she may be affiliated, past or present. All insights represent his or her personal perspectives only.
Hi, welcome and grüezi to a new episode of Governance Unplugged. I'm Thomas Mischel, your host with 25 years of experience in senior positions in internal audit and risk management for the Big Fours and as the head of internal audit and risk management at the World Economic Forum. Today I run my own advisory firm working hands-on with leadership teams to build governance that goes beyond ticking just the boxes, but governance that truly fits the organizations, its real risk exposures, and most importantly, its culture and DNA. The profession is changing fast. AI is automating tasks we used to rely on as the, let's call it, training ground for our junior auditors. Tasks such as research, testing, documentation, data collection, report writing, and many more. At the same time, expectations from boards, executives, but also the regulators keep rising. They want more assurance, more insights, more foresights, more impact, and at the same time, more efficiency. So the title of today's episode is Beyond Bots: How to Grow the Next Generation of Internal Auditors. And we will explore some very practical questions. Number one, what will define a modern internal auditor in the next years? How do we build careers when traditional entry-level work is increasingly automated? Number three, how can AI become a capability accelerator and not a job killer? And fourth, and certainly not least, how do we protect the human core of our profession, which is curiosity, ethics, courage, and empathy? To discuss this with me today, I'm joined by Dijana, the cooker. Dijana brings an extremely rare and highly valuable dual lens today. Dijana has more than 20 years of experience and spent many years in finance and assurance, starting in external audit, then in financial reporting roles, and later became the global chief audit executive of Barry Callebaut Group, reporting into the Audit Finance Risk, Quality and Compliance Committee of the Board of Directors. And then she made a fascinating transition into HR leadership, VP HR EMEA, VP HR Strategy and Operations, and today she is Vice President Global HR Business Partner for Enabling Functions at Barry Callebaut, the largest chocolate producer in the world. And honestly, that couldn't become more fitting for our conversation recorded today from Switzerland, where chocolate is almost like a second language to our people. Dijana, welcome to Governance Unplugged and great to have you.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm very, very excited to be here today too. Very well summarized, by the way, what I all did in the past, but maybe as well for your listeners, important to know that the HR business partner for enabling functions as well includes internal audit. Yeah, so I'm today in Barry Callebaut as well, the HR business partner for our internal audit function. Yeah, so it's a perfect fit.
So, Dijana, we usually like to start with a few very light-hearted questions to warm up. So, number one, which I would like to ask you is, when you had a demanding week, what's your simplest reset that reliably brings you back to yourself?
Yeah, thank you for such an entry question. Thomas, for me, no matter how demanding my week is, I really make it a priority to achieve my 10,000 steps every single day. And no, I'm not a victim of an advertisement from Japan from years ago. I know that the 10,000, it could be 8,000, it could be 12,000, it could be whatever. For me, what is important to reach these 10,000 steps, I need to add 1 hour of walking to my regular walks that I do during the day. And for me, it is more that I prioritize this 1 hour for myself. So I do that every single day. Quite often, I love to do it in the evening to really kind of digest a bit the day and set myself up for the next day.
The other question I would like to ask you is, What's one moment in your career where you really surprised yourself, maybe in a great way?
Interestingly, it really was an experience that happened to occur during my time as a chief audit executive. And I don't say just because of the podcast, but it really defined the person I am. I was leading a very challenging audit there, and I disagreed with the most of my executive committee members. So really, I disagreed with everybody in the exco up to the CEO. However, I was very confident that my audit report as such was accurate. So it was rather that they didn't like the outcome of my audit report. And to stay very firm during this experience, I was for the first time in a senior leadership position, and to find myself in a direct conflict with the majority of the executive committee, I mean, it was really frightening. And looking back, I really realized that this experience revealed a bit the strength that I didn't know that I actually really have, to go back, check what are the facts right? And if so, then yes, keep going, keep discussing, show them that you listen, but at the end as well to stay firm on your decision. So, and that really gave me a certain confidence that stayed with me even when I left later on internal audit.
I love that, and I think that gives a very nice personal touch to who you are as a person outside of work.
Thank you.
Let's move into the core theme of today, because your journey sits exactly at the intersection of internal audit, talent, and the future of our work. So, Dijana, you have lived both sides of the story, starting in external audit, then leading internal audit, and now shaping people strategy in HR. From where you sit today, how do you see the overall profile of a modern internal auditor evolving, and what capabilities, mindset, and personal qualities will distinguish the next generation from today's auditors?
For me, the modern internal auditor, or the internal auditor of the future, needs to find this balance between the compliance role that sits with internal audit and is extremely important, but as well the strategic advisor role that internal audit has. Thomas, we talk about this already for a few years, to be very honest. We always said, yeah, internal audit shouldn't be a compliance checker, needs to understand the business, needs to be a strategic advisor. I just challenge a bit. For me, internal audit must stand apart from other audit types by really delivering a unique insight for the board of directors. Yeah, so act as the second pair of eyes and ears within the organization. And that's why, for me, very important as well is that internal audit understands a bit what is really relevant for the board of directors. Yeah. So let me elaborate a bit more. First, for me, the neutrality and the ability to judge. So really to know what truly matters, when things need to escalate, when as well an audit topic can stay within the organization, doesn't need to go to the board of directors. So these type of judgment skills, they are the ones that really sets audit apart in the future. Another one very important is the communication skills and as well the stakeholder management. So from internal audit, because I see that quite often with chief audit executives. Do I always see it with the internal audit teams reporting into a chief audit executive? Not yet, but to turn complex analysis, so that internal audit does and will always do, most probably, into actionable messages for the organization to influence without the authority. Internal audit does not have always, and should maybe not have this authority to impose the actions, but to influence, to make the actions out of an audit report happen. For me, this is really key. And another one that I would as well like to bring is what I said in the beginning: courage and integrity. Yeah, so being willing to hold the line, being willing as well to deliver tough messages, difficult messages, to go into a disagreement with the decision makers in the organization. This is very important. And I said it in the beginning, the business acumen, the ability to really think strategic, to link the audit insights to the priorities of the organization. I think that is something where I would love internal audit to go. Those are the internal auditors as well that we in Barikal about, really say, okay, those are our future talents.
You brought this to the point in a very powerful way, Dijana. I could not agree more on these points you just mentioned, but when you say courage and integrity, what does that look like in a real moment? Can you share an example of holding the line and deliver tough messages sounds like in practice?
Yes, I mean, and I think it goes as well a bit back. Can you really train that, or is it something that you need to have in your personality? Yeah. So, and I think there is a very interesting element to that, Thomas. Yeah. So I believe that if you are a person who really tries to avoid conflict, then most probably it is a very difficult journey, and it is very difficult. How do you practice courage if you are fundamentally uncomfortable in these type of decisions? But usually those are as well not the profiles that then go into internal audit. So I didn't see that as well, not in external audit, that people who really do feel completely uncomfortable with conflict would go into such an audit profession. For me, it is much more, how do we enable internal auditors a bit earlier in their career to have this type of conversations? So then to say, okay, instead of maybe waiting until you are a senior auditor, is there an opportunity earlier in the career to say, okay, you expose talents earlier in their career, internal audit talents, to, for example, senior management, instead of a chief audit executive going to the board of directors or even to a CEO, CFO to discuss a matter, to take somebody already with as a more junior auditor profile into these meetings and let that junior auditor really explain, okay, the fact finding and bring the results as well, the reasoning for the results to very senior leaders. So expose talents earlier to senior decision makers and then help and train them to, for example, stick with the facts, explain the results of your audit, create an environment for junior auditors to feel comfortable to going to senior decision makers a bit earlier in their career.
That brings us to the next topic, which is AI and the changing nature of our work. Much of what junior auditors traditionally did, like the research, audit preparation, as I mentioned before, data collection, testing, documentation, report drafting, can now be automated or at least strongly supported by AI. What does that mean for how we build audit careers today?
For me, AI will change the audit profession just as it will change and reshape career paths in finance, in HR, and in many other business areas, Thomas. The activities that you just mentioned are necessary, but we need to ask ourselves, do they add value to the board of directors or the decision makers in your organization? And based on what we just discussed earlier, they are a prerequisite, but do they make the difference? Will they define what value internal audit has? Most probably not to that extent, no. Tasks for me are important for internal audit for the execution to draw the conclusion, yes, but they don't deliver these unique insights and as well that judgment that internal audit is expected to provide to the decision makers, to the board of directors, and as well, in my opinion, where they can really distinguish themselves from other talents or other functions in the organization. Coming back again, if certain activities become largely automated, so then most probably we will see a shift, a role shift from being this core part of auditors' job to the future profile that we look into auditors. So how do we design and develop career paths that prepare these auditors for the future? I think this is really key. And to be very honest with you, it's not that I have the full answer today. This is more about, okay, to exchange the opinions here and how do we need to do that. We as HR as well, I mean, AI goes so fast. I, for example, don't have yet as well the answer on how do I now need to change my job architecture and as well my career plans for my finance professionals or internal audit professionals. But what I believe needs to happen is we need to move away from a model where you enter the audit profession as a junior auditor, you spend years on repetitive tasks, and instead that we need to create pathways that accelerate this exposure, the stakeholder management, and as well to link the business acumen to the strategic thinking, okay, what does matter for my organization? And for me personally, it means we should invest in a training that really helps junior professionals much earlier in their career to apply judgment, to work on the communication skills, so that you are able to talk to decision makers much earlier in your career, and as well to build this courage. Because for me, those are the things. Another one, this judgment, right? To apply a judgment to know, okay, is AI right? Or can I maybe even challenge AI? I think that is exactly, what AI will not be able to replicate. So that's, I think, where the magic lies.
Diana, you mentioned the word courage, and I would like to come back on this because I think this is so important in our profession, becomes more and more important. Can you, and if yes, how develop and train the muscle called courage?
I mean, we touched upon it. I think there is a bit of an element of personality. I don't want to deny that. Again, it's a bit as well, okay, what type of profile we attract in any audit profession, whether or not it is internal or external audit. And I believe there is a lot of courage in internal auditors by nature, because I believe that otherwise we wouldn't choose that profession. But I as well believe that it is a muscle. And I saw it with myself that it grows through practice. So, and courage comes from putting a talent into a real situation where that talent, that internal auditor, needs to make a judgment call, speak up and stand by that judgment call as well. And even sometimes under pressure. And it goes a bit back to what I said, leaders and chief audit executives. I still see it when I talk to my network, that they don't take junior auditors so much into the meetings with the board of directors or senior professionals. I think it's as well a bit of a company culture. Is that a thing or not? But if then expose your junior talents much earlier to difficult conversations, let them learn as well how you, as for example, a senior auditor or a chief audit executive, lead these conversations. I think it's as well that as a company, create this psychologically as a safe environment to challenge with facts, challenge respectfully, but to say, okay, look, I created environment to exchange that view. That, in my opinion, is really key. Internal audit taught me personally that being brave at the same time listening, being approachable are not opposites, they go together. And I truly believe that in a world shaped by AI, that courage, applying judgment will remain that human skills that will matter more than anything else. I'm a big fan of role plays. So if we, for example, say, yes, we need to develop that skill set and that muscle earlier. And we know that, for example, an auditor needs to go in a conversation where most probably there will be a lot of pushback. I truly believe that we need to do a bit of role playing. I did that in my career quite a few times, and to be prepared, knowing that you will be most probably attacked, knowing that the other side will challenge you and maybe even challenge you in a way that you feel really, really uncomfortable, and you being prepared at situation because you had the opportunity to practice that upfront. That is something that gave at least me a lot of confidence in these type of conversations.
Diana, I wanted to ask you, but I think you already gave most of the answer to my next question, which I have prepared for you. Are we at risk to losing the training ground that once prepared our future chief audit executives? But I understand that in the education program and creating a safe space to speak up for younger people, taking them into conversations and do role modeling in order to build the future chief audit executives. So anything to add here, or any other thoughts on that?
Yeah. And look, this is really an important point, and Thomas, that really keeps me awake, being the HR business partner, not just to internal audit, but as well to finance, because internal audit and finance, I mean, the traditional career paths for that profession looks very much, okay, you start as a junior and then over years you add your experience and then you become a senior or you become a chief audit executive. Traditionally, these foundational tasks, now speaking for internal audit, testing, documentation, data collection, that training ground, as you said, for chief audit executive, it gave auditors time to learn the business, to understand the processes and develop as well this attention they need to have for the details. Quite often the audit results, they are not, they don't show up on a plate and then you can just take them and take them further. If so, internal audit wouldn't be a profession. And with AI taking over so much of that groundwork, of course, I am concerned. I just in the finance conference that I was speaking to you 2 weeks ago, I asked, how am I supposed to ever find a senior tax professional if that senior tax professional never has been a junior tax professional? But in a sense, it's rather an opportunity than a threat. And I believe the magic word will be blending. So blending means for me that we take these traditional tasks, and then we blend it with the experience, with those skills that are coming with artificial intelligence more pressing, like for example, this judgment, courage that we just talked about. So instead of spending years on very repetitive tasks, do we believe that internal audit talents, the young generation, whether they are willing as well to spend years in creating these career paths, or are they maybe a bit more impatient when it comes to their career development? So instead of spending these years of repetitive tasks, that we need to expose junior auditors maybe to higher value activities much earlier in their careers. For example, we could think about letting them participate in risk workshops. I talked about it, take them to very important meetings where internal audit is maybe faced resistance and challenge. And as well, instead of data collection, to immediately take that data collection that AI provides into the data interpretation. What I dream about, and we talked about it so many times, Thomas, about, rotational programs. I truly believe the background with finance and internal audit, HR, those are all elements when we talk about internal audit having a business acumen. I still struggle to say somebody starts in internal audit and stays within internal audit. I really believe that we need to have these rotational programs that, for example, makes it an absolutely mandatory step to have a stage as well, or a stage in internal audit. Yeah. So I think key is to refine or to redefine the training grounds, as you called it, so that it focuses a bit earlier and a bit more on the judgment skills of internal audit, the communication skills, and as well to link the business acumen to where is the organization heading to from a strategic point of view. And again, I don't believe it's just relevant for internal audit. I believe that finance particularly is much more exposed to that because we have this traditional career path from junior to senior to chief, for example.
So the solution is not to protect the old tasks, it's to redesign developments on purpose to meet the needs of the futures. Would that be possible?
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Yeah. So I really think that we will see a shift. I truly believe that going forward, most probably it will be more pressing for a function like internal audit to find people who can really focus very early to interpret data, to draw the right conclusions, and to connect their insights to the real business analytical thinking skills, the ability to influence. I think, everything that we already touched upon, but I think that this will be as important as the technical knowledge for internal audit.
So you directly bridge to the next topic, which is the skills of the future. So if you look ahead 5 or even 10 years from now, the skills, or what kind of skills would define a successful internal auditor, and which ones are becoming obsolete and why? Could you elaborate maybe a little bit more on what you just said on the attributes that sit at the very top of your list? And also I would like to bring in a question from a listener from our last episode when we talked about courage in the shadows and how chief audit executives navigate dark times. He suggested something I found really powerful and interesting, that we should make it part of the education of junior professionals to learn how to respond, let's call it a special situation, and to have match plans ready when things escalate. What is your view on that, and what would you include in such a practical playbook?
It's a very interesting thought. And let me maybe first talk about the attributes that I see should be on the top of the list for future auditors. And then we can as well think about the question that you received there. I mean, look, and I don't say that one of these attributes is maybe more important than the other. We know that there is nothing like this one internal audit department. It so much depends what type of company you are, the culture of the company. For me, what is very important for internal audit to be this talent pool of an organization as well is to create this judgment and the courage for internal audit. I really believe that this is really, really key for future talents in any type of assurance function. So technology will be able to provide you information, but I don't believe that technology will be able to replace the human judgment. And this ability, so to really know when AI is wrong, because this is key, right? So you get something out of AI or with the help of AI, but you need to be able to see, okay, does that make sense? Is that what is correct? And that I believe there is a lot of magic in there. Yeah. So if AI tells you the what for you to say, okay, first of all, is it the right what? But as well for internal audit then to respond to say, okay, but what now? What to do with that? Yeah. So the ability, the courage to make calls on relevance, escalations, impact, even under pressure from senior stakeholders in the organization, senior decision makers. So this is key, judgment and courage. The second one, indeed, are the interpretative skills. Again, it's not only about simply testing data. It was a big and an important step in our career, but it's about interpreting very complex data sets, because that I believe will change. AI will be able to help us to really run much more complex data through, but then internal audit to draw a meaningful conclusion, to connect it with the business impact and really identify what truly matters from a risk and strategy point of view. I believe that this will be key. We talked about it, communication and as well the influencing skills. Yeah, so I still see sometimes, and by the way, not in Barry Callebaut, obviously. Yeah, so I don't want my own internal audit team to think that I talk about them, but these communication skills to really find the right language to translate these technical findings, this audit report into something that is really actionable for the board and the senior leadership. I think that this is really key. So I believe that auditors, they have to be very strong communicators. So able to influence without authority. And this is as well something that will set future talents in internal audit apart. So, and then I don't need to tell you, but of course, tech savviness, a certain adaptability to technology as well will of course have a huge impact on AI. Yeah. So now I really don't believe that. I don't believe that AI will replace internal audit. I really don't. But I believe, and I see it coming, that it will change the way we work. And internal audit, to know what you can do with AI, to know as well what type of AI tools are out there. So internal audit needs to understand what are the solutions out there and what is your business using in order to do business. That will, of course, be a challenge for internal audit. Yeah. So to have this tech savviness, and this is something that I, for example, believe that we need to, as HR, we need to support to say, okay, how do we build that tech savviness for our internal audit teams as well and embed it in their career pathing? So there is not a short answer to that, but the next generation of auditors, they need to be strategic thinkers, relationship builders. They need to blend it with the compliance aspects of the role. So for me, there is a bit of a shift in testing and reporting to interpreting and advising. And that's where then internal audit will play a key role.
I really like the point, communication and influence that you mentioned. I just would like to share one thought about communication. And I really believe to what you say that the chief audit executive should be the chief storyteller in the organization. Yes. It's so key to understand all you have been looking at, to put it in a story and tell it to your senior stakeholders in order to make them understand what really matters for them and why that matters. And that sounds very easy, but in the complexity that we live, the complexity of our organizations, it's not easy, but that's one of the core tasks of a great head of internal audit, to put this in a story that sticks with the senior management and that they listen and understand what are the main topics they need to have on the table.
I always used to say in Barikal about, so that the chief audit executive is the one person that if you go and we have all these conferences, right, or we have opportunities where we sit together with a big bunch of colleagues, and then you have the evening dinner. And for me, the chief audit executive is the person, he or she sits on a table and you want to sit next to that person because you have, it's a interesting personality you exchange. This is something that I like always to say when I think about a chief audit executive. So that we love to spend time with that person. That is something is key. And not because a pleasant person or not somebody just, because you can influence internal audit. Absolutely not. But with these great communication skills and this storytelling as well to gain the respect from the organization, I think this is key for chief audit executives indeed.
How should audit leaders start reskilling their teams today to stay ahead practically, not just as a slogan?
Indeed, that's a very, very critical question. And that's what for HR as well is for me something that we need to make a priority, the reskilling, because it shouldn't be something just on a piece of paper. We need to be able to really translate it into concrete development plans. And as I said, not just for internal audit in general, but that skill mix that is now shifting. What does that mean in practice? Let's again talk about the development of communication and as well these influencing skills. Technical findings are only valuable if you can really translate them into insights that resonate with senior leaders. So for me, there need to be a practical step training that we need to provide for these type of roles is really, as you already said, storytelling with data. So not only about the data and the results, but what is the story behind? Why would that matter? So, and this is something that I believe needs to be embedded in the career plans. As well, negotiations, stakeholder management. For me, pairing auditors with mentors in the organization who excel in these areas can make a big difference. So we have, for example, when I, for example, think about a perfect match, it would be, for example, internal audit with our corporate communication talents, just as one example. So because they know how to make a beautiful story out of something that is relevant for the business. Just one food for thoughts. Then we talked about these rotational cross-functional opportunities. For future auditors, they need to have this business acumen is key for them to be successful, but as well to be respected within the organization. Again, I don't believe that you get respect in the organization because you are checking controls. You are getting respect in the organization because you can link something that is not going well to the risk that applies for the organization. Me, rotations from internal audit with, for finance, compliance, commercial, for example, pricing. So to understand an organization holistically, this is something that I really, really hope for internal audit because it will make a huge difference. Another one that I would like to explore, at least for us in Barikal about, is to really accelerate exposure to high value activities. So move junior auditors beyond the repetitive tasks faster. Involve them, for example, in the risk assessment earlier, take them to the stakeholder meetings, expose them, as well to your board, expose them to senior decision makers much earlier in their careers. And then we talked about as well the technology aspect. So every auditor should start feeling comfortable using AI. And if you are scared that AI takes away your job, then most probably you are a bit biased towards AI-driven tools and these advanced analytics. But if you as an internal auditor really see that as an opportunity, then I really believe that you will approach it differently because then this is not about turning auditors into some data scientists, but about enabling internal audit to really use AI in their favor for them to focus on the storytelling, on the business impact it might have. So to focus more on that, what really matters to your board of directors, to your senior leaders. And if you are as internal auditors, if you are able to combine this tech savviness, so to know what are the technology that is having that impact with judgment, with influence, with storytelling, then I believe that those are the future talents that we can use in so many different ways.
Let's address the challenge of the talent pipeline. Across industry, we have seen fewer graduates actively choosing internal audit as a first choice career. What can organizations do to make internal audit attractive again and attract top young talents?
Yeah, that's something. Maybe take a step back, Thomas. Why did I choose AI on this finance conference to talk about that with our finance professionals? Because I see that fewer graduates are actively choosing these classical entry points for their first choice career. So we see that. So at the same time, we are as well seeing that a lot of young professionals are as well unemployed. So, and that's why actually I find it a bit scary, to be honest. You go to the university, you have a great education, and afterwards you're struggling to find your way into the corporate world. So that's why I found it very interesting back at the time, and I chose that topic. But for me, I believe that both creates a very unique opportunity for internal audit to position internal audit as a very attractive career path for top talents. So what should organizations do more concretely? And that's really important. And that's the first one for me. If you take that serious, you need to rebrand internal audit as a strategic career path and not as a compliance job. Young professionals, they usually go for impact and they want to be visible in the organization. So we need to explain to these graduates out there and communicate that internal audit acts as the second pair of eyes for the board of directors. So a role that provides exposure, that as well links decision making to the strategic decision making, with as well the ability to create this holistic view over a business. So sometimes comparable very much with graduate programs. I always struggled a bit that graduate programs are so well perceived in an organization usually to get talents in, and internal audit is always kind of falling behind. And I never understood that. So for me, it is really to rebrand internal audit as the place to start your strategic career. And then secondly, as I said and elaborated a bit earlier, offer these accelerated development programs and above all these rotational programs for internal audit. We need as an organization to really think about how do we create that business acumen within internal audit, broaden the perspective of young talents earlier in the career and make this role a bit more dynamic. And we talked about it as well, the investment in analytical trainings. I don't want to train anybody on how to use ChatGPT. But I believe that there are AI tools that are really out there who make a huge difference on how we do business. And that is a skill set that we need to really think about, or a training program that we really need to think about for internal audit specifically, because internal audit will be exposed much more to different types of AI tools that will have an impact on the organization than, for example, other functions who will maybe more focus on one specific tool. Internal audit is not just about finding issues, it's about helping the organization as well to succeed. So to really think about as well, okay, what might have a tremendous impact on the organization, highlight the purpose of internal audit. That would help for younger generations to rather choose careers that are much more purpose driven than maybe the generation when I started 20 plus years ago. But then, and that is my last point, I still struggle sometimes to see how little we advertise internal audit as, for me, what it is really about. It's this huge learning experience. Gosh, in my time in internal audit, that was 2 years, nothing but learning. I'm still today so thankful that I had that opportunity to be in internal audit and to work with my team as a chief audit executive for Barry Callebaut. I learned so much about the organization, the processes, the businesses. I learned so much about myself as well. Yeah. So that I would never miss that, combined as well with the fact that I travel the world. I'm one of the most probably few people in Barry Callebaut who were able to travel to all of the origin countries. I traveled to all of our chocolate regions. I learned about cocoa and chocolate. So for those, that's not the same. It's different. Not a lot of people have this unique opportunity, and internal audit is the perfect place. So that's unbelievable. So geez, I cannot imagine any graduate who wouldn't go for such an amazing opportunity. I think as well, talking about what will differentiate internal audit in the future, Thomas, as well, I think one of the challenges that we need to as well start to address for internal audit is indeed traveling and getting to know the organization. I'm a bit scared that with AI, for example, we'll say, yeah, we let AI do, and then we don't need to send our auditors to the respective sites, to the respective regions, to talk with the people on the ground. So I truly believe as well, to meet the people, to meet the business that you're auditing, that is key. And we need to use travel as well as something that is unique to internal audit or very much embedded within internal audit to get to know the business. And that we need to somehow advertise a bit better. Yeah. So the disappearance of traditional entry-level roles for me due to AI is not really a threat. It can be an opportunity, but we need to attract graduates for what, in my opinion, internal audit should stand for impact, visibility in the organization, networking, technology, and as well the personal growth. I don't think I would be the person that I am today if I would have not had my time in internal audit.
So Diana, I would like to come back real quick to the question before, which I think we did not exactly address yet. The question from one of our listeners in terms of would playbooks be helpful or how to address special situations within our missions.
I love the idea of playbooks. I use that quite often in my career as well within HR, because I really believe, I know we all feel very uncomfortable. I know that you can really start practicing, at least, for everything that potentially could go wrong. You never know how a person on the other side reacts. So I love role plays, and I as well like the idea of the playbooks. And I think what would help is to create, for example, a playbook or as well a role play for those situations that we know that will sooner or later happen to us. For example, a disagreement with your CEO, a disagreement with your line manager, or that you need to separate from somebody when I talk, for example, about HR. And at least that you feel comfortable for those, yeah, to start with that one. And then you can have even a more sophisticated playbook to say for those situations that you might not come across every now and then, but to prepare as well for the worst case scenario. And I know that it's very difficult to prepare for the unknown, but I love the idea as well to say, okay, let's prepare for something that is so unrealistic. Let's prepare for something that is so far off, but just to see how do we react for such a situation. Yeah. So I truly believe that creates a lot of value as well. This set the communication skills, the ability to judge on a very difficult situation. These are invaluable techniques, skills that we can develop with, be it a role play, but as well a playbook. Absolutely. Yeah. Even if it is so far off that we think, hopefully we will never need it.
So if I change the lens to a more positive angle, if we see AI as a talent enabler and not necessarily as a threat, there's a lot of talk about AI replacing people, but could it actually elevate them? I would love to hear your view from two angles. One, as an HR executive thinking about talent, roles, and capability building across the organization. And two, specifically for internal auditors, how can internal audit teams use AI to upskill, strengthen judgment, and increase impact so it becomes a development tool rather than a perceived job killer for internal audit?
I think indeed AI has the potential to just not to replace tasks, but really to elevate our people. I see it sometimes as well with myself, how much time I sometimes have just because I know I don't need to spend so much time on to find the right tonality or to really think about what type of impact it has. So AI will bring certain automation to repetitive transactional work. At the same time, that means that roles will shift. We talked about it, and that capability building becomes much more critical. So I said it, and I really believe that instead of fearing a job loss, we should focus on how to use AI in our favor, how to reskill, and how to upskill employees for higher value activities. Yeah, so such as judgment, creativity, communication skills, and as well the human interaction. Yeah, so AI used the right way can free up time for people to focus on strategic thinking, problem solving, innovation. And for HR, and I don't say that we are yet there, this means that we as well need to design learning programs that combine technical savviness with leadership and the communication skills and create career paths that as well reflect this new reality. Another big challenge that I see for HR, internal audit, or any type of business that we are supporting is as well how to challenge going forward CVs, because I don't believe that AI needs to be about, okay, handing in a certificate and then I as HR, I take that certificate and then I say, I have that skill set, so let's go for that person. As well, we as HR, how do we challenge these capabilities that come with AI? We are not yet there, but I think that journey or this discussion needs to start for us as well so that we give the right support to the organization. For me, it's an opportunity to make internal audit or talents in internal audit more powerful. Internal audit teams can use AI as a development tool by, for example, leveraging the AI for deeper insights, to spend less time on just pure mechanics, but more on interpreting data and taking the data to connect it to the business risks. Mm-hmm. This focus on, instead of asking for the what, to really ask, okay, so what, or what's next, or what to do with that. I think that this is an ability that we really need to strengthen for internal audit. And then the storytelling, we talked about it, to really say, okay, how do we translate what internal audit takes together with AI, translate that into actionable insights for leadership. For me, AI for internal audit can be an enabler, will not be a job killer. It elevates the role from a more maybe compliance angle to a strategic challenger role. And the auditors who thrive will be those who will combine this tech savviness with internal audit, with encouragement, judgment, and the communication skills.
What lessons from your audit background have most helped you shape stronger, more future-ready HR strategies, and what has HR taught you to change the way you think about internal audit and its value? And to make this tangible for our listeners, could you share stories from your journey, moments where something worked, maybe surprised you, or maybe even went wrong, and the key learning you took away?
For me, internal audit really changed me personally in a way that before internal audit, I was very quick to make judgments. So sometimes even without fully understanding the context, history, or the circumstances. And in internal audit, I learned that usually employees are well intended and well executed are not always the same. And as well, that there is a big difference between well intended and badly executed, or bad intended and well executed. Those are worlds in between. And I realized that understanding a person's motivation is key to understand a situation. So that perspective really shapes everything that I do. For example, in HR, I focus rather on intentions, context. That is really important to me as well. Just recently heard a sentence, we judge others by behaviors while we judge ourselves by intentions. And I think that's, for me, something that that you need to understand the person's intention in order to understand and as well assess the situation correctly. Yeah. For me, it was very important. I didn't want to be an internal audit that was regarded like a police within BC. That was not for what I was standing for. I wanted to be somebody who who is still approachable and a person you can talk with. And as well, that one is something that I developed within internal audit and then took later on into my career for HR. Yeah. And yes, you're exposed to senior levels, understand them, but as well be approachable, as well understanding that even though you did your job, you can still be wrong. So this is something that I really kept until the very end. That's something why I'm so grateful about my experience within internal audit. Yeah. So because of this audit experience, I know I can stand firm when needed, but I as well learned that listening deeply, finding a person's motivation, at the end as well, find common ground, that balance with courage and empathy was a big leadership lesson. And that leadership lesson for me started really with internal audit. Yeah.
Dijana, that brings us straight to the next topic, which is leadership and culture. As technology reshapes how work gets done today, how do we ensure that profession doesn't lose its human core, like curiosity, ethical judgment, courage, and empathy? In practical terms, what should leaders and teams do today to keep those qualities at the center while still embracing the digital transformation?
The idea that technology will replace human work is, I think, as old as mankind. I think even Aristoteles already said something in that respect, so that we will all be replaced at a certain moment. I think that fear is with us already for centuries. But history shows us the same truth as well, that technology does not replace humans. There is a very interesting one as well. I think it was Klarna, a company from Sweden. They dismissed 700 people because they thought that these activities could be done all with AI. At the end, they needed to rehire all of these 700 people because the quality suffered very much. And yes, maybe in 10 years it will be different, but I really don't believe that AI will all replace us. Yeah, so AI will never replace qualities like curiosity, ethical judgment, courage, as well empathy. These are deep human behaviors, and they are what as well makes internal audit what internal audit makes so valuable, and as well the leadership of internal audit in these type of discussions. I think the challenge is to keep these qualities at the center for internal audit while embracing this digital information. Yes, just, pure controls checking, maybe that can be replaced. But this ethical judgment as well, to judge yourself and challenge AI, this is something that will not be replaceable. Create a space for human judgment. Use AI for efficiency, for data analytics, yes, for documentation, yes, but make sure that your decision remains human. And that brings me to another one, knowing when AI is wrong. That will be something as well that will be key for all of us, but predominantly for internal audit. Another element that comes to me is as well foster curiosity and this context seeking that I just said as well from my own journey. Internal audit taught me to not jump into conclusions, that I need to have my facts together. And this is something that, this context seeking and as well this ability to always think of that I might be wrong. I might be wrong because I do not know everything and I maybe did not yet consider everything. I think balanced tech training with human skills, that is for me where we have a lot of potential going forward, and where as well we as HR, we need to support our business and as well internal audit in that.
These 4 points, is this the culture that we need in the internal audit function to attract and retain the next generation?
I actually don't believe that internal audit needs to have its own separate culture. Yeah, so at the end of the day, internal audit is part of the organization. Yeah. A company culture is built on values like, for example, team spirit, integrity, then that should equally apply to internal audit. You can have maybe a certain interpretation that is much more reflecting the reality of what internal audit does, but at the end, you need to be part of the company culture. If, for example, your culture is a bit more political, more performance driven, then internal audit will inevitably operate within the same context. What matters is being authentic. Internal audit can and should most probably define our own interpretation of these company values, but create an entire separate culture. How do we stay attractive as an employer in the age of AI? From my perspective. It comes back to really foster purpose, curiosity, young talents. They want to understand why things matter. And I think their internal audit is in a very, very great position. Talking about culture as well with the challenges for the future, I strongly believe that to attract young talents for an organization, but as well for internal audit, means as well think about your hierarchies and empowerment. Next generation of workforce typically does not thrive in very rigid hierarchies. They want access, approach, autonomy, but as well having a voice. Listening to them, giving them responsibility earlier will make a real difference. And yes, we need to develop on continuous learning, technical upskilling. And we talked about judgment, the communication skills, those are non-negotiables. And then the exposure to the business, Thomas, the business travel, the stakeholder interaction, the cross-functional collaboration for internal audit talents to build that business acumen and to build as well that confidence. There is nothing more empowering than to see with your audit, you are having an impact on the business. I mean, for me, now talking specifically as well for internal audit, there is one element that is really key, and that is psychological safety and trust, especially in internal audit. People need to feel safe. They need to feel safe to ask questions. They need to feel safe as well, maybe to challenge assumptions and raise concerns. And we need to ask ourselves, do we create such an environment in our organization? Yeah, so we need to provide a culture, an environment of psychological safety and trust for internal audit particularly.
Looking forward, if you had to give one piece of advice to today's chief audit executives about cultivating future audit talent in the era of AI, what would that be?
Internal audit for me should be positioned as a platform for building leaders. At least we need to start embedding that as well. So we don't look at it as a compliance factory. We really look at it as a talent pool for the organization. Yeah. So AI will not weaken internal audit. It will elevate it. What is really key is that I want to work in an organization where all of us look as internal audit as a very powerful stage in your career to understand how an organization really works.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Diana. That has been an amazing and highly interesting conversation. And what I take away is that the future of internal audit isn't about competing with the bots or with AI. It's rather, number one, it's about designing a profession where AI accelerates our learning, and number two, where auditors grow early into judgment and stakeholder impact. And I really think that's extremely strong. And the third is where we intentionally protect what makes our profession valuable, which is integrity, curiosity, courage, and human insights.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you so much for having me. It was really a very, very interesting conversation. And I know that we are maybe first at the beginning of it, but I look very much forward how AI will change our profession and as well organizations going forward.
Amazing. And Diana, if our listener would like to find out more about you or get in touch with you, where can they potentially find you?
To be very honest, the easiest is most probably LinkedIn. Dijana de Coca, the Vice President HR for Global Enabling Functions. So just approach me via LinkedIn and I'm more than happy to connect.
Thank you, Diana. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. I hope this episode gave you a fresh perspective on how to grow the next generation of internal auditors in a world where technology is changing faster than career models. Make sure to subscribe to Governance Unplugged, and if there's a topic you would like us to explore or a guest you would love to hear from, please drop me a message on LinkedIn. And as always, together, let's build stronger, more resilient organizations, one conversation at a time. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep driving governance excellence.